For our media production, we used conventions from other typical horror films, such as lighting and music and props and the location and that sort of thing. And through this, we were able to justify our choices in how we were to perform and undergo our own production, such as by choosing our location, the sort of lighting that we would use, and all that sort of stuff. And in our production, we also challenged the sort of typical gender stereotypes by, rather than having a male killer, we used a female killer, and that contradicts the sort of general idea that the male characters in the production would be the villain instead of the female character.
The characters are teenagers, and this is represented in the language used, for instance jargon, with words such as selfie. The type of clothing the characters wore is typical of teenagers as well. This all helps to create a sense of realism within the film, which is relatable to the audience.
So when looking into what type of media institutions might distribute our film, we looked on the BFI website and found lots of small companies. One of the ones that we found was a company called Speak It, which is actually a small company, but it's linked with other companies such as Channel 4, BBC, and the UK Film Council Lottery Fund. So we thought that they might be able to help us because obviously having lots of other sponsors, they'd have money to be able to do it, and our film is more likely to reach a wider audience. We also looked at another company called Barn Productions, and they typically produced horror films. They were low-budget indie films, basically, so it would kind of be ideal for distributing our film. But I guess that they probably wouldn't have much money to be able to do it, being quite a small company, so that might be an issue.
We decided that typically we'd have teenagers as our audience because we could probably make it relate to them the most. We looked at having very fast takes, which would speed up the pace, and it might make it more interesting as stereotypically teenagers get very bored very quickly, and also it might make it a bit more difficult for people who aren't perhaps as young as teenagers to understand what's going on, and it might be confusing, which is an equally interesting effect.
So we used a survey to find out what our audience would like. From the information that we received, we used that to satisfy and surprise the audience. For example, we used a female killer, which is reversing the gender stereotypes, so that would have surprised the audience because they wouldn't have expected it to happen. We also focused on having the actors the same age as the audience, so it could kind of engage them within the film.
Well, we started by doing the prelim, which helped us gain more knowledge about the camera and the editing software, which we then used for the actual film. So it obviously saved us a lot of time because we knew our way around the software. So I'd definitely say that, we tried a few different editing softwares, and Premiere Pro is probably the better one out of them, but just because it was an easier one to use and it's just quicker to put together.
We learned how to use the different technology and editing software, and also the different camera shots and where they should be placed in the film to create the most effect. We also learned about music and what type of music it should be included in it to also give the best effect. Like having at the beginning we had the kind of calm music, which gave the impression that it was going to be a lovey-dovey kind of type film.
I generally learned a lot about the editing software because obviously for the prelim it was only 17 seconds, but it was like a crash course in how to use it. And definitely looking at the titling as well, that helped because obviously there's such a variety of the things that you can do with titling, and it really does have a good effect. So looking at the prelim was really helpful in terms of that.
The primary thing I learned from doing our preliminary task was about the 180-degree rule, and how if you want to record something, you're going to have to sort of maintain the same sort of camera angle as to not have to manipulate the environment around, that would be off screen otherwise. And we also learned about how to spot continuity errors, such as by using match-on-action shots when opening doors or gates and other things of the sort.
With the prelim, I learned how to direct the actors, which was useful in the final production.
So I think personally I would like to change the beginning of the film because I feel like it was a little bit slow, although that was the effect that we wanted. I think that generally, particularly from the audience response that we've had, people have found it a bit too boring, and so we need a little more something in there. But I think from the work that I did, I would like to change the titling. I think that the actors' names aren't as bold as perhaps they should be, and it's more focused on our names and the production team rather than them, even though they are the stars of the film.
If I were to be able to change anything about our production, I would probably shorten the sort of start of our film, because I found that we were quite time constricted when it came towards the end, and we had to kind of rush the very ending where the main character ended up dying. And so I feel like it would have been better if we had a slight bit more time, even just 10 seconds extra on the ending, just so that we could sort of draw out a little bit more and maybe have it be a little bit more dramatic or scary.
If I could change anything, I would change the ending for when the male lead is killed. For instance, I would have used a typical sound effect used in horror films, for instance a jump scare, because I don't think the reaction was very effective.
So we thought that the filming generally went quite well. Everyone kind of stuck to their roles, so we managed to get on with it quite quickly and efficiently. We also found that the beginning bit of our film got the feedback from the audience that we were expecting, how it sort of was the nice, lovey-dovey kind of thing, and no one really expected it. So it was nice to see that was kind of well achieved.